right now, the man of the hour, Virginia's own Attorney General, the presumptive Republican nominee for governor, the newsmaker, Ken Cuccinelli. Mr. Attorney General, great to have you, especially today where we expand our network.
Well, that's great to be with you as you get bigger.
Well, you know, it's good to be big. Remember the old saying? That's I'm not going to go there, but let's get to the important stuff. What we want to talk about today, among other things, Mr. Attorney General, is your book. We find it to be fascinating for those of our audience that is not familiar with it. Our Attorney General is now an author. His book is called The Last Line of Defense, and it outlines Ken Cuccinelli's historic fight against the unprecedented overreach of the federal government, like Obamacare, and agencies like the EPA and FCC and the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, etc. Mr. Attorney General, can you share with our audience what inspired your new book, The Last Line of Defense?
Well, it's not just about our contest with the federal government. It's also about fights that other AGs have been carrying on from other states. But what it is about is federalism, the real-world role that it's playing right now, and the last line of defense refers to the fact the last thing we can do within our system when the federal government breaks the law, oversteps the boundaries of the Constitution, is sue them. That was part of the rationale for the federal courts that the Founding Fathers had in the first place. And so this chronicles a lot of those fights recently. And we also make the point, this is not just a Democrat phenomena, that the growth of the power of the federal government has been coming and growing for quite some time, probably about 100 years since Woodrow Wilson got elected. And we're finally seeing the government reach a level of power where it can start to just take our liberties, make its own decisions, and that means less freedom for American citizens, and it means less autonomy for the states themselves. And that's why the founders put in place the ability of the states to fight back when the federal government oversteps its boundaries. And in Virginia, we've been doing it. We won just this month against the EPA, which I have told you I call the Employment Prevention Agency, because they're so good at that. But we won that one this month, and to give you a sense of why that matters for everybody in the country, 2 hours after the order came out, where we'd beaten the EPA about how they were trying to regulate rainwater going into a creek,
right?
I called my Democrat colleague, Chris Koster, in Missouri, the Attorney General of Missouri, and said, "Hey, Happy New Year." And he said, "Well, Happy New Year to you." And I said, No, I mean really Happy New Year, and began to explain to him what had happened and how we had won, and that the other three cases in America were all in Missouri. And so he was, needless to say, very happy to hear that we'd carved that path for him already, and that he had some ability now to defend his local governments, as we did with Fairfax County, saving them about $250 million. That's $1 million for one county. And so when we win a federalism fight in Virginia, it helps them in Missouri. It helps them in all the other 48 states as well. So it's an important feature of the foundation of our government. Unfortunately, we're more than busy taking advantage of it.
And so what you're saying, Mr. Attorney General, is that your fight against federal overreach in Virginia has a much broader application, and it really cuts through partisan lines, right?
Absolutely. Take this EPA case that we just won. Our co-plaintiff was the Democrat Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County. Now, do you think they really wanted to sue President Obama's EPA 3.5 months before his reelection? I don't think so. That tells you how bad it had to be. In our other lawsuit against the EPA, there are 4 other Democrat attorneys general who got in the case with us. These are not just, partisan undertakings. These are legitimate, legal, constitutional fights where we're trying to put the limited in limited government, even though the federal government's trying to escape those tethers.
Now, if we can get on to politics for a second, so far your fundraising efforts for your gubernatorial campaign have gone relatively well. Why did you make the decision to stay on as Attorney General and not do the more traditional course of action, which would be to resign, and therefore enabling you to continue to raise money in your campaign between now and the end of the session?
Well, just so your listeners understand the distinction you're making, Virginia's no limits. Corporations can give everything above $100 is reported. So full-blown First Amendment, except during the General Assembly session, no money can be raised. And
right.
And I think that's a good rule.
Yes.
It doesn't help me right now, but I think it's a good set of rules. I promised when I was running, as did my opponent, we both promised that we would serve out all 4 years of our term, and I'm keeping my promise. I ran for Attorney General to be Attorney General. At the time, I didn't expect to be running for governor in 2013, but I also, didn't promise not to do that. But I did promise to stay in the office for all 4 years, and the people of Virginia elected me Attorney General. I got more votes than anyone in history running for Attorney General to do this job, and I'm going to do it as well as I can for my full 4 years. And if that gets in the way of running for governor, well, so be it. But that's what I committed to do, and I'm going to fulfill my commitment. We're the only state in the country that has this Attorney General's resign background. It's about 50 years old. No other state has it. I talked to attorneys general in 3 other states, Florida, Washington, and Pennsylvania, about the balance between running for governor and being Attorney General, and all 3 of them unanimously and emphatically said it's absolutely doable. There's no problem doing your job as Attorney General. You just have to keep your priorities in place, which I will most assuredly do.
Right, except for the fact that, as you mentioned, during the session, your gubernatorial campaign cannot raise money. Your presumptive Democratic opposition, Terry McAuliffe, is going to be out there for the next 2 months raising money. So how is that? I mean, is that going to put you, going into the summer and spring, is that going to put your campaign at a disadvantage vis-a-vis McAuliffe?
Yes, it will. Especially when you see some of the players coming in for him. I mean, his largest donation in his first report was from a union. I mean, that's unprecedented in Virginia. And what's even more unprecedented is that when he ran in 2009, the same thing was true. We have just never seen this in a serious party nominee for governor before. I mean, this is a hard run by the unions, and we are going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. We're still doing volunteer work. We're doing a lot of the grassroots work in preparation for when we get out into the spring. So we're not slowing down on that front. But you are right. We can't raise money until the end of February. So we are at a disadvantage in that respect. So, but you know what, John? I have a funny record. I have won 4 races, 3 for the state Senate. Those were in Fairfax County, and 1 for Attorney General, and I was outspent in all 4 of those races. Now, mind you, it wasn't a goal. It just worked out that way.
Right.
But we have been outspent in 4 races and won all 4 of them. And with somebody like Terry McAuliffe, as Brian Moran said, we need a fighter, not a fundraiser. Well, they've got themselves a fundraiser now. And I think it's reasonable to expect that he's going to outraise and outspend us. But that's happened to us before, and as long as we build a campaign based on principles, we have found that brings people out to volunteer and to help get our message out the most important and most effective way in the world, and that's one person at a time.
So would it be fair to say the Democrats have the fundraiser and the Republicans have the fighter?
That would be fair to say. Yes, fighter for the people of Virginia. That's right.
We're speaking to Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, who has a brand new book out. Comes out February 12th, called The Last Line of Defense, The New Fight for American Liberty. And, Mr. Attorney General, I'm a little bit surprised, not so much, but a little bit surprised at the timing of the release of the book because, as you know, the release of books around election time can give ammunition to opposition researchers. Do you have any problem with any of the content in there that might be turned against you, whether it's correct or not?
Well, to your latter point, people will attack me for what I do and for what I don't do. So take resigning as AG. If we resigned as AG, the Democrats would attack us for that. Since I'm not resigning as Attorney General, they'll attack me for that. So I expect them to do nothing but attack. I don't think they have anything to offer Virginians for a positive vision on the economy, on transportation. You're not seeing it in the General Assembly by Democrats. You're certainly not going to see it from a guy who really doesn't even know how Virginia works. That's Terry McAuliffe. But they are going to attack. So I expect that. The timing was not so much our choice. I would have liked to have released it last summer. Crown had come to us and invited me to write this book, and we got plugged into their timeline rather than them getting plugged into ours. So that's just the way it worked out, and so we'll work with it as best we can.
And make the most of it, I'm sure. Now, let's talk about attacks, particularly as it goes to something that Mr. McAuliffe has pointed out on his Facebook page, about a week or so ago, I should say. On an Iowa-based radio program, you said that opponents of a federal mandate for contraception coverage should be willing to go to jail to fight the law. Now, Mr. McAuliffe has turned that around to point up, right or wrong, that an AG telling people that they should break the law to fight a law is wrong. I would love to hear your response on this.
This is a civil rights issue, and the civil right here is, of course, the right to worship, religious liberty, right to free expression, and that the federal government, I can't think of a time in my lifetime when they have imposed on it so egregiously as with this HHS mandate. And mind you, this wasn't part of the law. This is just a regulation. But whenever I talk about religious liberty, you note they turn it around. All they talk about, they don't talk about denying people religious liberty. They talk about contraception. And I'm not talking about contraception. Government doesn't have a role in contraception. Government does have a role in protecting your civil rights, especially today on Martin Luther King Day. The man who really came up with the American nonviolent protest theory of civil disobedience. It's pretty egregious that they can't get any higher than contraception when we're talking about protecting people's religious liberty.
No question. Mr. Attorney General, we're out of time. We want to thank you for joining us today. Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli just released a new book, The Last Line of
Available
Defense.
on Amazon, John. Available on Amazon.
Just go to Amazon.com. It's right there, The Last Line of Defense. This is Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli's historic fight against the unprecedented overreach of the federal government. It's a must-read. Just go to Amazon.com. If you want more information on the Attorney General's race for governor, go to, what is it?
Cuccinelli.com.
That's it, Cuccinelli.com.
Spelled just like it sounds. Phonetic in southern Italy.
And he wrestled the name of that
Cuccinelli.
website away from his brother. It was a tough
did.
fight.
That's right.
Cuccinelli.com. A lot of vowels in there. We want to thank you for joining us. Mr. Attorney General, good luck. We'll have you back.
Thank you, sirs.